When the millionaire laughed, a humble cleaner shocked all with her amazing transformation. Sarah Thompson stood against the gleaming marble pillars of the prestigious law firm, her heart racing and muscles tightening with every echoing laugh that bounced off the walls. It was a lavish office party, a celebration of wealth, where men in sharp suits and women in designer dresses swirled with flutes of champagne. She gripped a mop in one hand, feeling utterly out of place, the stench of floor cleaner mingling with the scent of expensive cologne. That's when she overheard him, a millionaire client named Greg, parading his disdain with a group of colleagues. "It's a shame they can't just hire actual professionals," he chuckled, letting mockery drip from his lips. Each word cut deeper than she anticipated, igniting a fire of humiliation that flared in her chest. For weeks, she had scrubbed the very floors these affluent people walked on, prided herself on doing the best job she could, but in that moment, all her sacrifices felt meaningless. Visions of her long days cleaning offices while her mother lay sick at home flashed before her, a silent reminder of the neglect she felt in her own life. The shimmering world of success seemed to laugh back at her mockery, not just of her profession but of her existence. Instead of crawling under that weight, a fierce indignation surged through Sarah. She straightened, fists clenched, as clarity struck. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. That sleepless night, she stared up at the cracked ceiling of her cramped apartment, her mind spinning. Was she really meant for more? Her dreams of becoming a lawyer had been relegated to whispers in darkened corners. But what if those whispers could become roars? She signed up for classes at the local community college, each keystroke on her keyboard an act of rebellion against the life imposed on her. Fear crept in. Could she rise above this? Pulling her mother's blanket tightly around herself, she fought through self-doubt, remembering the determination in her mother's eyes when she spoke of their better days. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every class, her resolve strengthened, but prejudice loomed, questions of belonging pushed at her, scarring her confidence. The shadows of her former self clawed at her, reminding her of the million-dollar suits, the laughter, the world forever out of reach. Then came Mr. Jameson, a retired attorney with a glimmer of hope in his eye who noticed that spark within her and offered mentorship. He pulled her aside one afternoon, urging her forward. Yet with triumph came turmoil. She battled with imposter syndrome and the weight of history, feeling like an outsider in a world designed to keep her out. Just as she faced the jubilant thrill of acceptance into law school, a scholarship, no less, a fierce storm struck home. Her mother's health took a terrifying turn, her world crumbling in an instant. Unable to breathe, Sarah's anguish mingled with the tightening grip of family obligations. She stood at the crossroads, her dreams threatening to slip away. A household revelation, however, awaited her in a dusty box, a treasure trove of her father's legacy as a once esteemed lawyer. Determined now more than ever, she envisioned fighting for her family's name, feeling the crushing weight of expectations and dreams collide. Yet, as she prepared for her first court case against the very law firm she once cleaned, destiny had a twisted sense of irony. Staring into the eyes of the millionaire who democked her, Sarah's heart raced with fear and anger, the past clawing at her while she teetered on the brink of a future brimming with potential. Would she emerge as the victor in this battleground of societal scorn? All questions loomed as she took her first breath. The courtroom doors standing open between her past and an uncertain future remained an electrifying silence thick with possibility. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with a tension that felt ready to snap. Sarcasm turned to silence as everyone turned toward Sarah. She stood planted before the mahogany table, the very one where she had once scrubbed dirt and dust away, now a platform for her aspirations. The stark contrast between her old life and this moment sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. Greg's laughter echoed faintly in her mind, but this time it wasn't the oppressive sound of mockery, it was a call to fight back, with a deep breath, she pushed aside the memories of nights spent caring for her mother, the whispers of doubt that had previously paralyzed her. This was not just a battle over legal principles, it was a personal crusade against every dismissal she had endured. She caught the eye of Mr. Jameson, his presence a small anchor of steadfastness amidst the chaos. Nodding subtly, he silently conveyed that this was her moment, a chance to wield the weapon of her knowledge and determination. As the proceedings began, she felt the pull of caution threatening to rein her in. She could feel the weight of assumed incompetence pressing against her self-worth. The opposing counsel, clad in a designer suit that screamed privilege, launched into an opening statement designed to undermine her credibility. A brief pang of self-doubt threatened to sneak in, but she quickly expelled it, reminding herself of the countless hours spent studying, poring over case law, preparing for this very moment. Her turn arrived with a voice that felt foreign at first, a blend of resolve and defiance. "Your Honor," she began, steadying her stance against the table, "this case is more than just contracts and agreements. It symbolizes the very fight for equality in our judicial system." She commanded the room's attention. With every word, she navigated the complexities of the case with pointed clarity, revealing not only her understanding of the law but her lived experience. As she delved deeper into the arguments, she could sense a rising wave of respect and intrigue from the jury. Adrenaline coursed through her, igniting a fierce dedication to ensure her mother's legacy was not lost to society's judgment. Each confident assertion, each unyielding point of law, seemed to cast aside the shadows that once haunted her. Though the tension in her stomach clenched tight whenever Greg's gaze found hers, Sarah became more deeply rooted in her purpose. She unfolded the layers of injustice, each revelation emceed with a raw passion that tapped into the realities of systemic imbalance. With evidence collected from her father's old case files, she reminded everyone of the human behind the legal documents and of the family she fought to protect. Noticing a flicker of commitment in her audience's eyes reassured her that these walls, once merely for the affluent, could be a space for the vulnerable too. But just as she gathered momentum, a methodical objection from the opposing counsel sliced through her momentum like a knife. "Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant," he insisted, his voice a sonic wall against her assent. Sweat trickled down her brow as pressure mounted, threatening to spill into panic. How well did she understand the game being played? This was a litmus test not just of her case, but of her very spirit. In that moment, facing the scorn of the opposing team, she understood that her past battles were training her to confront this one. This was her stage, and she would not back down. Drawing on the love for her mother and the glory of her father's legacy, she took a steadying breath. Acknowledging that what lay ahead would require more than knowledge, it demanded resilience, authentic conviction. "Your Honor," Sarah began, her voice unwavering, "this is not just about legality, it's about justice for families like mine." As her words filled the room, she sensed the equilibrium of power begin to shift. Would the gavel fall in her favor, erasing the relentless laughter that had haunted her dreams? Would she seize this moment destined to rewrite not only her own story but that of many others? Her heart thrummed in synchronization with the pulse of anticipation as she awaited the decision from the judge. The scales of justice hung perilously, and the courtroom held its breath. The moment of truth was nearing, and with it, everything she had sacrificed could finally take the form of a palpable victory or shatter into disillusionment. A deep silence filled the courtroom as the judge leaned forward, his gavel poised to announce the fate of Sarah's endeavor. Time felt like molasses, stretching as she held her breath, her heart wrestling with a blend of hope and fear. Just when she thought her words had anchored her argument securely, the judge's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Your objection is upheld," he said, dismissing her statement with a nonchalant wave. Her stomach dropped. The mockery of Greg's laughter echoed back, taunting her resolve. But she refused to let defeat seep into her spirit. Retrieving her composure, Sarah focused on the moment. She could feel the energy in the room shift, whispered murmurs danced between the audience and the jury, an undercurrent of confusion. Her words had broken through to some, despite the setback. Instinctively, she decided to pivot, to adapt to the constraints, rather than letting them unravel her. "Your Honor," she said, her voice a calming fountain amid the brewing storm, "I wish to reframe my argument." She wasn't merely fighting for legalities, she was up against the walls of age-old prejudices. What occurs in this courtroom echoes beyond these walls, it carries the weight of our collective conscience. Slowly, she began to weave a narrative of personal stories, her family intertwined with the case's essence. The faces of her mother and father flashed before her eyes, reminding her of the sacrifices they made and the dreams they had. Imagine being a family deprived of protection, a mother struggling to make ends meet, advocating for her child's future against an indifferent system, she continued, her voice growing stronger, more assured. The jury's expression seemed to soften, eyes widening with empathy. She had shifted from legal jargon to the heart of the matter. Through this transition, Sarah discovered a previously latent talent, storytelling. It was the missing thread in her preparation. She realized that her past experiences, although seemingly ordinary, were powerful tools to connect with people on a deeper level. This insight ignited her courage, kindling a fledgling belief that her voice was not just valid but vital. As she spoke, her words blossomed into a vivid portrayal that breathed life into the case. The jury was no longer mere spectators, they were witnesses to a moment of awakening, a transformation igniting in her presence. Each word became an emboldened stroke on the canvas of her ambitions, but as she reached a crescendo, the opposing counsel sprang back with renewed vigor. "Your Honor," he interjected, a thin veneer of sarcasm coating his words. "This is an emotional appeal and does not reflect legal grounding." Fighting back a wave of frustration, Sarah felt pinned again by the weight of his undercutting. But where self-doubt had once rooted her in place, now a fiery resolve surged in tandem with her spirit. "Injustice is rarely black and white," she countered. "It lives in the gray areas, where emotions and laws intersect." With every rebuttal, Sarah's confidence expanded. She began to recognize her own metamorphosis, a humble cleaner now thriving in a profession that once seemed as distant as the stars. Yet, just as she was reclaiming her foothold, something unexpected occurred. A murmur erupted among the jurors, a hint of incredulity rippling through the audience, and for the first time, she could see doubt breaking the surface of her opponent's composure. The tide might genuinely be turning, perhaps she truly had the power to sway them, but in a sudden twist, she caught sight of Greg leaning against the back wall, arms crossed, a smirk dancing across his lips. Her blood boiled, fueling the fire within her once more. The personal stakes had increased. This wasn't only about the case, it was a decisive stand against those who dismissed her efforts. With a firm grip on her resolve, Sarah steeled herself. She whispered a promise to herself, to harness this moment, to channel every ounce of conviction into her words. Suddenly, the judge interrupted. "I think a recess is in order," he stated, an unexpected firmness in his tone. "We'll reconvene shortly." The anticipation hung heavily in the air. As the gallery began to empty, Sarah realized. This wasn't merely a battle for justice in her case, it was part of a larger journey. She would return refocused, fortified by her discoveries. As she exited the courtroom, the world outside felt revitalized, not confined by her past but defined by her aspirations. Yet lingering questions floated through her mind. How would she navigate the growing tensions with her rivals, and what unforeseen challenges awaited her in this charged environment? Her mission wasn't yet complete, and something unfurling deep within her demanded exploration. How could she strengthen her voice even further and reclaim her narrative? The answers felt tantalizingly close, just out of reach, waiting for her to seize them. The echo of the judge's gavel still reverberated in Sarah's mind as she stepped outside the courthouse, the autumn air crisp against her flushed cheeks. She glanced back at the looming structure, a temple of law that had felt both foreign and intimate just moments ago. The brief recess had offered a flicker of hope, yet the silence that enveloped her left much to contemplate. Sarah began to walk, each step deliberate, a grounding exercise to help her confront the knot of uncertainty twisting in her gut. She thought of the courtroom and the jury, their eyes reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions. Her heart raced as she replayed her words. The metamorphosis of persona was undeniable. Clearly, her instincts had been right. But she needed to do more than just tell a story. she needed to wield it like a weapon. As she paced, she mentally catalogued the elements that had shifted during her argument: personal connections, raw narratives, unflinching truths. She had, for the first time, been authentic. That authenticity resonated, but in the stark clarity of reality, she realized there was another layer to peel back. She couldn't afford to be reactive, she needed strategy. The contest wasn't only against the opposing counsel but against her own insecurities. Finding a cafe nearby, she settled into a corner table, the coffee's rich aroma pulling her from her swirling thoughts. Around her, patrons chatted and laughed, far removed from the weighty struggles of the courtroom. She felt a brief pang of envy for their carefree demeanor. How naive they appeared. Engaged in her own mental deliberation, Sarah rummaged through her bag to pull out a small notepad, a relic from her earlier, less confident self. As her pen touched the paper, she began to map out thoughts. She knew that storytelling was powerful, yet she realized it must be backed by the solidity of facts. Legal principles would not be mere background noise in her presentations, they would be foundational for her narrative. What if she combined them seamlessly? The first list filled with key legal points: precedents, statutes, historical context. Under that, she drew a line, transitioning to another page where she could intersperse her narrative with burgeoning facts. How could she present data that supported her emotional appeals without compromising her authenticity? The subtle interplay between logic and emotion began to take shape. Each bullet point expanded in her mind, intermixed with personal anecdotes related to real families facing similar struggles. Just as Sarah was getting lost in her flow of ideas, a familiar voice jolted her back to the present. "You didn't really think you'd get away with bending the truth in there, did you?" Greg's sardonic tone sliced through her optimism like glass. Her pulse quickened, but this time she held her ground. "At least I was speaking truth to power, Greg. Can you say the same for your side?" His expression contorted into something dangerously cynical, yet for the first time, she didn't flinch. Sarah realized she had crossed an invisible barrier, her professional growth was palpable. As he swaggered away, his confidence a thin veneer over palpable insecurity, it struck her. She could no longer view him as an adversary looming above her, he was merely another obstacle to navigate. Finishing her notes, Sarah felt lighter. She could confront the challenges ahead head-on. The stakes were personal, but more than that, they echoed through the lives of people counting on her, and she refused to let their stories be dismissed. As she stood to leave, the barista slid her coffee cup across the counter. Sarah's fingers curled around it, warming her resolve as she stepped back into the brisk reality the courtroom awaited her, but this time, she wouldn't step back in as the tentative underdog. Instead, she would enter as a fierce advocate, fueled by authenticity and preparing for battle once more. With her head held high, she couldn't shake an unsettling thought: while she had found strength in her voice, what levers would she have to pull to fully reclaim her narrative? And how far would she go to protect the people behind those stories? The answers loomed ahead, the next chapter unfolding with potential and peril intertwined. As Sarah made her way back to the courthouse, the weight of anticipation pressed down on her like an anchor, yet her stride was buoyed by newfound resolve. She revisited the notes she had created, those intricate webs of logic and narrative spinning in her mind. The thrill of strategy coursed through her veins, igniting her focus. Today wasn't just about defending a case, it was about asserting her identity as an advocate, a true representative of those whose stories needed to be told. Entering the courthouse, the familiar sense of polished wood and the faintest aroma of old paper filled her senses, flooding her with memories of fear and determination. A familiar knot twisted in her stomach, but this time it was mixed with excitement. She lingered at the entrance where the energy pulsed around her, the anticipation of the day ahead was palpable. While waiting for the proceedings to begin, she spotted Greg again. This time, instead of slinking away mentally to shield herself from his presence, she met his gaze with clarity and confidence. He smirked, as if this were a game he had already won. Yet Sarah's mind churned through her strategies. She noted his mannerisms, searching for weaknesses she could exploit. Observation, she realized, would be critical in navigating these treacherous waters. The courtroom was filling up, and as the judge entered, the atmosphere shifted. Sarah took her seat, her heart racing. She couldn't help but notice how quiet the room became, a silence thick with expectation. With each moment that dragged on, her reflection from earlier solidified: she was no longer an outsider. She belonged here, armed with more than just legal knowledge. She carried the stories of the vulnerable, urging her forward. As the case resumed, Sarah found herself sharpening her arguments on the fly, intertwining her facts with profundity. With every point she made, she flashed back to the families she had represented in her mind, their pain, their struggles, empowering her words. She didn't just want to win the case, she wanted to spark change, not only for her clients but within herself. The prosecution's arguments came, mechanical and impersonal. Greg's words dripped with insincerity, a contrast that intensified her resolve. Each time he attempted to undermine her claims, she countered with precision. The more he spoke, the more she could feel her influence grow, fueled by the belief in her integrity. Sustained by clarity and boldness, Sarah hammered home her points on the legal precedents. She connected the dots, sculpting each legal principle into a powerful narrative. Her voice rose dynamically, weaving facts seamlessly into her emotional plea. The jury hung, enraptured by the dual tapestry she crafted. In that moment of connection, she realized her evolution was more than just about advocating for others, it was about shaping her own narrative. Each decision in the courtroom built upon interwoven threads of her past and aspirations for the future. Yet the deeper she plunged, the more she uncovered the raw fear of vulnerability that lingered beneath. What if, after all this effort, she still fell short? As she conveyed her closing remarks, the swell of emotions within her was undeniable. She stood not just as a lawyer but as a force for change. Yet, even as she basked in this newfound power, an unsettling thought knotted in her chest: what if the moment of reckoning came at a price? Drawing in a breath, she scanned the jury's faces, searching for signs of understanding, or maybe doubt. Her pulse quickened as she realized the stakes were higher than she had dared to contemplate. Her victory could mean the very determination of her identity. The trial continued, but Sarah felt herself on the precipice of something monumental. The courtroom buzz faded into the background of her thoughts as the weight of what lay ahead bore down on her. In the depths of her drive, she questioned whether reclaiming her narrative would push her into a realm fraught with even greater risks. Outside the courtroom, echoes of the lives she sought to protect flickered like shadows in her periphery. As she prepared for the next phase of the trial, a chilling realization crept in: how far would she go to stand by her convictions? And what awaited her when that line was crossed? The air in the courtroom felt electric, charged with unspoken truths. As Sarah took her seat once more, she could feel the weight of every stare upon her: accusatory, doubtful, curious. The scorecard of judgment had shifted. It was no longer just about the case at hand but about everything she brought to the table. She couldn't escape the feelings bubbling beneath her calculated facade. Could this unfolding drama redefine not just her career, but the core of who she was? The case resumed, and with it, the verbal sparring between her and Greg intensified. He was no longer just an opposing counsel, he had become a symbolic reminder of the struggles she faced, the barriers erected by those who saw her as less than them. She pulled from that inner wellspring of motivation, reaching for something deeper in the recesses of her experience. In a calculated move, Sarah charged back. "You claim to represent justice," she challenged, her voice steady yet infused with emotional gravity, "but at what cost to those who are most vulnerable? Your version of truth is a construct built on elitism, hidden behind legal jargon that obscures the suffering of those affected." The murmurs in the courtroom surged, and she felt the stirrings of solidarity from the jury. It was a delicate threading of emotion into logic, and she was holding the needle. Greg disrupted her moment of clarity with a steely retort, but Sarah had anticipated his moves. Instead of flinching, she pressed on, her strategy now a well-oiled machine. Her confidence brought about adrenaline, honing her focus to a razor's edge. She deftly wove her narrative into hers. The facts should never lose their humanity, she declared, and she saw heads nodding in the juror's box. Yet even as she navigated the intensity of the courtroom battlefield, a nagging thought echoed internally: was her aggressive stance a reflection of a budding leader or merely a mask shielding her fears? The trial progressed to its final phase, and Sarah prepared her concluding statement with meticulous care. The words had to resonate not only as a capstone to the arguments but as a plea to the very humanity of the jurors watching. The honor of those she represented mirrored back at her in every mirrored surface and cautious light that suffused the space. As she stood before the jury, poised yet fervently aware of the danger she faced, Sarah understood the personal revelation unfolding. This was no longer simply an exercise in legal skill, it was a confrontation with her own insecurities. Each breath carried the weight of her hopes, each gesture grounded in her conviction of truth. I stand here not just as a lawyer, but as a voice for the silenced. Let my clients find life in justice, as you uncover the value of their stories. Her closing resonated through the chamber, and a profound silence descended. It wasn't merely words, they were a declaration of her identity, a resounding testament to her evolution from just a lawyer to an advocate who dared to challenge the status quo. However, doubt remained, a heavy anchor tethering her to the ground. Was she ready for the implications of her choices? Contemplating the potential fallout of her emotions churning beneath the surface, she wrestled with the reality of public opinion, the weight of expectation, and her own burgeoning identity. What if this transformed her not just as a lawyer, but as a person? As the jury began to deliberate, she found herself standing once more at that precipice, staring down the vast unknown. The weight felt eternal, laced with an agonizing tension that transformed time itself, compelling her to confront the reality awaiting her. Would victory cement her place in this realm, or would she unearth darker truths about herself that she had long buried? That question lingered. The threshold of what lay beyond the verdict now loomed ominously. Her journey was far from over, and the realization settled in: the verdict that awaited her could spur an awakening far greater than she had envisaged, leading to a confrontation with someone who had been a shadow in her thoughts all along. The jury's deliberation stretched, each tick of the clock amplifying Sarah's internal turmoil. The rich timbre of hope clashed with the monochrome dread that constantly whispered that victory might elude her grasp. She stood in the stark confines of her office, well-lit yet stifling, walls adorned with degrees that now felt like gilded cages. With every passing moment, the voice of her mentor, Rachel, haunted her thoughts. You must be ready for the consequences of your own voice, Sarah. It was a reminder that echoed like a drum, calling forth both resilience and doubt. What if she had set the stage for her own downfall? What if, in making a stand, she had rallied society's scorn rather than its applause? The lines between advocacy and aggression blurred, and the distinction solidified into a specter that loomed ever larger. She drew a deep breath, scrutinizing the documentation spread before her. Asserting her identity as an advocate was not merely a performance, it demanded integrity in her practice and authenticity in her challenges. She fought the urge to scroll through social media, fearing the judgment that could splinter her resolve. Instead, she diverted her focus to the life outside her immediate walls. Instead of remaining a passive participant in her fate, Sarah grabbed her phone and called her best friend, Clara. I need perspective, she admitted, each word laced with urgency. I feel exposed. Just meet me at our spot, and bring your notes. You're not alone in this, Clara reassured her, the sound of her voice coaxing a semblance of calm. The coffee shop, still frequented by the familiar faces of their shared past, provided a blend of comfort and nostalgia. There was something grounding about the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that siphoned away her anxiety. Clara arrived, her warm smile illuminating the haze of Sarah's doubts. They settled into a cozy corner, with steam clouding their glasses. Tell me about it. What's gnawing at you? Clara prodded, her inquisitiveness stripping away Sarah's layers of pretense. As Sarah relayed her doubts, Clara listened intently. You're grappling with the imposter syndrome due to this case, aren't you? Like proving your value to everyone and yourself, she offered. What if the jury sees me as just a little girl in a room of giants? Sarah whispered, the weight of her struggle palpable. A moment of silence fell, their eyes reflecting shared experiences and aspirations. Then you show them who you are, a seasoned warrior armed with reason and a sharp tongue. The moment you stop seeking validation from others is the moment you begin to validate yourself. This trial is as much about your past as it is about the future, Clara encouraged, her voice steady. The words reached deeper than the surface, they echoed through the corridors of Sarah's mind, igniting a flickering flame of determination. She was uncovering not just a professional commitment but a personal evolution that demanded the acknowledgement of her own worth. Maybe it's time I lean into the challenge, Sarah said resolutely, her heart racing with newfound clarity. As she contemplated this next chapter, the narrative shifted. Her quest was not merely about winning a verdict but about confronting her identity with courage. They finished their drinks, and as they walked out into the vibrant street filled with bustling life, something inside Sarah shifted. The verdict wouldn't solely determine her fate, it could herald a transformation, a defiance of both expectation and self-doubt, yet the looming confrontation with the shadow she sensed would still have to be faced. The layers of her identity were destined to unravel even further. The foundation of who she thought she was expanding to encompass not just the victories but also the imminent shadows of her past. In that moment, though composed, she felt a rebuild was necessary. A reckoning was coming, entwining her past experiences with her aspirations. This trial was only the beginning, for deeper realizations awaited her. Would she find the strength to embrace them as she pressed on into the unknown? As uncertainty loomed ahead, the prospect loomed larger. Perhaps it was time to confront the shadow that lingered uninvited, the one that could either lead her to liberation or tie her down in regret. The sun dipped low as Sarah stepped onto the busy street, the weight of the world on her shoulders yet a lightness invading her spirit. She wasn't just walking into the future, she was forging it. As she navigated through the throngs of people, every face seemed to reflect some part of her own struggle. She had emerged from doubt, she was realigning her sense of self, not as a mere bystander waiting for the jury's decision but as a driving force in her own narrative. Preparing for the next day's proceedings, she strategized her approach. This wasn't merely another case, it was the stage for her reclamation. In her mind, she replayed Clara's words, "Show them who you are." It stirred a resolve that elevated her far beyond the role of an advocate. This would be her declaration. That evening, back in her office, Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, filing old cases and notes, reminders of how far she had come. The clutter reflected her turmoil, papers from past victories mixed with records of failures. Each document became a symbol of her journey, linked by the experiences that had molded her resilience. She paused at a letter from Rachel, her mentor, praising her potential. How blind was she in dismissing those early accolades? Each success had been a step toward this moment, each setback a lesson. It was time to embrace both. As the clock ticked past midnight, Sarah found herself at the heart of the storm, the specter of her doubts creeping back in. She recalled the moments when she felt unworthy, overshadowed by the hustle of her peers and the grandeur of the courtroom's expectations. It struck her this feeling of inadequacy was a ghost, an echo of her old self she was meant to confront head-on. Ignoring it meant prolonging her own surrender. Driven by determination, she scrolled through her emails, searching for the evidence that could embolden her stance. There it was, a key piece of communication from a witness who could shape the narrative in unexpected ways. It was a revelation that reframed her case and could potentially sway the jury. This small detail became a beacon. Importantly, it bore her signature, her persistence, her thirst to uncover hidden truths even amid personal doubt. The next morning arrived with a fervor that danced in the air. Sarah suited up, a blend of anticipation and nerves vibrating just beneath her skin. The courtroom, once a place of intimidation, now resonated with the rhythm of her heartbeat. What awaited her was not merely a verdict, but the culmination of her advocacy and an examination of her core values. As she stepped inside, every gaze felt aligned with her own growing conviction. The weight of her past failures filtered into a sense of purpose. This trial mattered not just for the case's outcome but for the unveiling of her authentic self, a self that could inspire trust rather than doubt. When the judge entered, the room quieted, casting a sharp focus on Sarah. The moment stretched, her heart raced, and her mind swirled as she prepared to unveil her findings. But in that moment, she felt a shift, a realization that while the stakes were high, her journey would forge ahead regardless of the jury's reaction. The profound uncertainty, once a burden, became a catalyst. Would she walk out feeling triumphant or defeated? The outcome loomed heavy in her mind, yet something deeper was emerging. It was no longer just about winning. It was about transforming the very foundation on which she built her identity. As she stood to present her case, her voice steadied, revealing layers of conviction she had never tapped. Yet as she addressed the jury, feeling the intensity of gazes, a chilling thought gripped her. Was she ready to confront the most personal doubts lurking just beneath her bravado? With breath held, she proceeded, weaving her narrative with mastery, determined to unveil not just the case but her very essence. Just as she delved into her evidence, she felt the ghost of her previous self stir again, demanding acknowledgement. The tension thickened as she began to realize that behind her transformation lay an original wound still waiting to be addressed, a confrontation that might change everything yet again. What new truths lay beneath that veil, and would they serve as a foundation or a fracture? With every word, she pressed forward, both vulnerable and unyielding, ready to face whatever shadow the courtroom would reveal next. The jury's eyes were fixed on her, but the weight of their stares quickly dissipated as her focus sharpened. Sarah felt the room fade, condensing her world to the narrative she crafted. With every word, she painted a vivid picture, not just of the case but of the stakes involved. It was her life displayed in stark contrast to those who doubted her all along. Yet, the thrill of the moment was juxtaposed with a disquieting thought: what if the deeper truths she had buried were about to resurface? As flashes of hesitation crept in, the specter of her past formed a haunting spectacle, reflected in fleeting images of her former self, timid, hesitant, forever looking to others for validation. Today wasn't just about winning the case, it was a trial of her very essence. With deep breaths, she pressed on, the evidence connecting seamlessly, unveiling the layers of her argument thread by thread. The pause for punctuation felt necessary, an opportunity to recalibrate her internal compass. Yet, with every assertion, a flicker of doubt pricked her consciousness. Was it truly the evidence speaking, or was it a deeper, intrinsic voice asking if she genuinely believed in the transformation she was portraying? That evening, as she left the courthouse, an eerie silence gripped her. The bustle of the bustling street initially filled her with energy, but the silence echoed in her mind, a reminder of the unaddressed shadows lurking within. Each step felt heavier as she grappled with the unsettling realization that revealing her authentic self meant confronting the flaws hidden just beneath the surface. Back in her office, surrounded by the chaos of papers, Sarah flicked through her notes, reliving the courtroom moments. They were exhilarating yet decidedly unkempt, a reflection of her scattered emotional state. Amidst the accolades from the day, she was haunted by a wave of doubt. Had she strayed too far from the truth of her experiences? Focusing her attention on the documents, she noticed a judgment of sorts, an old letter buried beneath life's nuances, a case she had lost. The memory struck her with the intensity of a jolt. In that judicial defeat lay the roots of her resilience. Her mind raced. What if confronting that loss could reinstate her purpose? What lessons sat tangled in that failure, ready to breathe new life into her current struggle? The haunting specter of another self continued to challenge her. It wasn't merely avoidance, it informed her every decision, yet acknowledging it could be the bridge to her empowerment. Even in failure, there were lessons. Her next move had to be strategic. It wasn't just about pushing the narrative, but truly understanding the depths of her growth. Compelled by this newfound realization, Sarah made a decision. The wave of fear built again, but this time it carried a different weight, a sense of proximity to something that had eluded her for years. She would confront that case, dissect why she stumbled, and reclaim the wisdom lost in the aftermath. Gone were the fleeting anxieties of inadequacy. She would engage with her history, not to wallow but to transform it into a source of strength. This critical turning point was an opportunity to reshape both her narrative and the truth she presented to the world. Arising from self-scrutiny, she drafted a plan. Tomorrow, she would reach out to Rachel, her mentor, the one person who would not only understand her journey but guide her to navigate the emotional waters she had kept at bay. Reconnecting with Rachel could illuminate the pathway obscured by shame, and as anticipation sought to usher her into a new dawn, one thought gripped her: how would Rachel respond? Would she lift Sarah further into the light, or would their conversation unearth more shadows than Sarah was prepared to face? As the sun broke over the horizon, casting a golden hue through the blinds of her small apartment, Sarah Thompson felt an unprecedented calm. She could hardly believe how far she had come, from the woman scrubbing floors at the posh law firm to a respected attorney standing at the precipice of triumph. But today was the day the jury would reveal its verdict. As she prepared for the courtroom, an eclectic mix of emotions surged within her. Gone were the days of doubt and inadequacy. She now stood with the fortified understanding of her worth, the knowledge that her journey was not merely a testament to legal prowess but a profound reflection of resilience and self-discovery. Once inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. She exchanged subtle glances with Mr. Jameson, her mentor, and felt his unyielding support envelop her. She had prepared meticulously, not just with facts and figures, but with the stories of families that fueled her passion for law. Those stories were her power now, pushing her forward with a fierce determination. The judge entered, and an audible hush fell over the room. As she sat poised at the plaintiff's table, a smooth confidence radiated from her. Today wasn't about proving her worth to her peers or the affluent edifice surrounding her, it was about honoring the voices of the marginalized, those who had faced the very injustices she had fought against. And in that moment, Sarah embraced her newfound identity. She was an advocate, not just for the case, but for herself. The deliberation had felt agonizingly long, but now the jury's return was imminent. The atmosphere thickened. Every heartbeat echoed with significance. As the forewoman delivered the verdict, Sarah felt the thrum of anticipation pulse through her veins. "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff." The word struck her like a shot. As a sense of relief and elation flooded through her, she felt an unshakable conviction wash over her. This victory was not merely a personal triumph, it represented the resilience and strength born from childhood hardships, the lingering memories of her mother, and the legacy of her father's name. Indeed, it was a victory for all who had ever felt powerless in a world that often rewarded privilege. As time passed, the days morphed into months, and with every new case Sarah undertook, her confidence solidified. She no longer hesitated before entering court. Instead, she found joy in the challenge, relishing the opportunity to challenge injustices. Each win was not just a testament to her skills but a catalyst for societal change, proving that the voice of a humble cleaner now echoed loudly in the halls of justice. Recognition soon followed. She received an award for excellence in advocacy, a moment that stirred gratitude and disbelief in equal measure. Standing on that stage, she recognized the full circle of her journey. The incident that had once filled her with shame now catalyzed a transformation that would inspire countless others. She had proven her competence and firmly established her position within the legal community. The culmination of her journey left Sarah reflecting deeply on what it meant to be authentically herself. No longer a shadow of someone else's aspirations or expectations, she had emerged vibrant and resolute. She vowed to continue her pursuit not just in law, but in advocating for those whose narratives were often overlooked. As she stepped away from the microphone, the applause echoed in her ears. Sarah had conquered not only the challenges of her profession but emerged as a beacon of empowerment, confident, competent, and transformed. This was the moment she had fought for. The trials had weathered her, but ultimately, had forged her into a woman of purpose. Her journey wasn't simply a career, it was a lifelong mission, a commitment to unlocking doors for the underprivileged, challenging bias, and striving for justice. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every interaction makes a difference. Comment your thoughts and theories about this transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this inspiring conclusion. You need to show your support for the power of personal overcoming stories right now. Don't wait even one more second to spread the inspiration.